Hey everyone, Shaun Stevenson here, author of the Throne series, and today we are talking about a book series I am surprised I haven't reviewed any of these books yet, because I've actually read 6 of the Indiana Jones prequel novels, but this is the first one I'm reviewing. So here it is, Indiana Jones and the Interior World by Rob MacGregor. This is book number 6 in the Indiana Jones prequel series. So this series came out in the 90s after The Last Crusade, and they all take place before Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now, I am a huge Indiana Jones fan. I love all 3 of the Indiana Jones movies. That was not a slip. I didn't mean to exclude 4 and 5. I actually, in retrospect, there are moments of Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull that I enjoy. And there are moments I do not enjoy, like swinging on vines with monkeys, but that's beside the point. And I actually also, on further reflection, kind of enjoyed Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I wish Indiana Jones had not become so bitter and like disgruntled about life in that movie, but I still enjoyed it. I mainly enjoy Indiana Jones for the exploration of the world, exploration of myths, and I really love the action sequences that are so often in Indiana Jones stories. Now, the Indiana Jones prequel novels, I do not think they really get cooking until book 4. The first 3 books were interesting enough to keep my attention and to keep me wanting to finish the entire book. Like, I was interested in them, but mainly because I was interested in Indiana Jones, not because the book itself was so amazing and such a great plot twist, etc., etc. They were dealing with different interesting things that I found, oh, this is interesting for Indiana Jones to be investigating the Oracle at Delphi or investigating Stonehenge and those sorts of things. Indiana Jones, in my opinion, works the best when he's actually searching for some kind of a religious artifact. And I think, honestly, particularly a religious artifact that has to do with Christianity. I think that's why Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they're looking for the Ark of the Covenant, and then The Last Crusade, where they're looking for the Holy Grail, are the best Indiana Jones movies. Those two have this very interesting kind of twist to them where they're looking for this thing that is believed by a lot of people to actually be real. And so that's, to me, a fascinating thing to think about in comparing Indiana Jones stories between different ones. Like the Crystal Skull, people are kind of like, are aliens real? I have no idea. Personally, I have no clue. So I'm like, they could be, I guess. It's possible aliens could be out there, but, oh, I'm sorry, they weren't aliens. They were interdimensional beings, according to George Lucas. But I digress. Let's get back to Indiana Jones and the Interior World. Now, Indiana Jones and the Interior World, this book was super interesting off the bat to me, because you might notice it, but Indiana Jones is checking out Easter Island, or the Moai statues that are there, and he's trying to like figure out some stuff about those as Marcus Brody, who is the professor that's often teamed up with Indiana Jones, who runs the museum. He's the museum curator, and so he's teamed up with Indiana Jones in this book. They go to Easter Island, they're investigating this, and then Indiana Jones comes across another mystery which takes him away from Easter Island. And I gotta say, I feel like it was an interesting plot development to take Indiana Jones away from Easter Island, where we are exploring the Moais. We're trying to figure out like what's going on with these. And then it's really actually like 4 or 5 chapters in, not that far into the book, when Indiana Jones goes off on this other quest that's kind of unrelated. And I kept thinking, oh, maybe we're gonna come back to Easter Island. Maybe we'll circle back to that. We never circle back to it. And I feel like it's important to say, because I feel like this cover is kind of misleading by having the Easter Island Moai statues on the cover. I think that it's really misleading because those are not what this book is about at all. Indiana Jones is really investigating the question of, is there a world inside of Earth? Like, is there an interior world that's inside of the Earth? That is what Indiana Jones is really investigating in this book. And I do think that that's a super interesting thing. I think that Rob MacGregor really delves into that, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But I just thought it was interesting that the whole Easter Island thing was just like dropped. And I was like, wait, where did that go? I want to go back to that. Like, let's do something with those. Like, you aren't going to do anything with that? That could have been a really interesting plot. And okay, bye. But I do know that sometimes these Indiana Jones books are connected. So it's possible that the next Indiana Jones book could circle back to that and go back into it. This book just doesn't. And I think, like I said, that's important to know going in if you're thinking, oh, wow, this is about Easter Island. It's so mysterious. Like, I know as a kid, I was always fascinated about Easter Island. It was always up there as one of those big mysteries to me of the world of like, what's up with these statues? Where did the civilization go? Like, what happened to all this? Like, I just have always been so fascinated by that. And we just don't explore it, which is okay. Indiana Jones in these books, I have to say, there's never character development for Indiana Jones. He's kind of the same at the beginning of the book as he is at the end of the book. There's just not character development that way. There's interesting things that happen, and I think there's interesting exploration of ideas and philosophy, but there's no growth. Like, that's just not a thing. Indiana Jones is kind of who Indiana Jones is. And of course, like, I feel like he learns things. I take all that back to just say that in previous books, there was character arcs for Indiana Jones, but this book kind of started over a little bit. The first 5 books in the Indiana Jones prequel series kind of connect together and build on each other all the way through, and they keep bringing up like past things from the other books, and those 5 books, you really kind of got to read in order. And then you come to this book, and it does feel like a reset in a lot of ways. However, there is one key tie back to a previous book, and I don't want to say which one because it's really spoilery, that's in this book that I was like, oh, wait, what? Like, that is coming into play? I did not expect that. So I feel like you can't really jump into the series on this book because you'd be lost on a key plot point that doesn't come up till way later in the book, where you're thinking, oh, wait a minute, like, what is, well, oh, that's back from that thing in that book previously. So there's definitely a key element that you have to have going in. Now, I gotta say, like I said a minute ago, Indiana Jones, one of my favorite things about it is the action scenes. And some of the previous prequel books have been real light on action, except for book 4 and 5. Those two started amping up the action, especially book 4. Book 4 was super interesting. It's Indiana Jones and the Genesis Deluge, and it's about finding Noah's Ark, and I thought that was just a stellar book. It was so fun. I really enjoyed it. And then you had book 5, which I'm not going to say what that one's about because it's kind of an interesting thing, but that book was really interesting too, but it was a little smaller in scale. This book, not small in scale. It is such a huge, like, world-altering storyline, and I feel like it really ramped up the action. You have some wild action scenes in this book. And a lot of the action scenes are really tense. They're very mysterious. Some of them are creepy. Like, this is actually some of the creepiest that Indiana Jones gets. It almost reminded me a little more of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom than any of the other Indiana Jones stories, where I feel like Temple of Doom had these horror elements in it, and this one kind of has some of that, where you're like, oh, wow, I did not expect that to happen. That's pretty interesting. And there are some really just major fantasy elements that also come into play here, which is also interesting for an Indiana Jones story. Often, the supernatural or fantasy or sci-fi elements of Indiana Jones are this like tiny sliver of the story. Most of the story is like following clues, on the adventure, hiking through different places, exploring, figuring out the mystery of what's going on. And then there's this element of supernatural or element of fantasy. And this book had such a huge a huge part of it was about the fantasy, supernatural, sci-fi stuff. And I thought that was really different for an Indiana Jones book, and I actually think made it more interesting, at least to me. Now, I have to admit, I like fantasy, I like sci-fi, I like horror books, so I like that stuff. So I'm kind of predisposed to really enjoy this, but I also really love just action adventure stories. So knowing that those elements were mixed with the action adventure in this book just elevated this one to me, and I really, really enjoyed it. I think that you have some fascinating exploration of, could there be an interior world? Is that a possibility? As well as an exploration of believing and seeing. I think Indiana Jones in this book, for the small character growth that he has here, it's more, like I said, more exploring a philosophical idea, is really exploring the idea of what you see and what you believe. Like, can you believe what you see, and can you believe in what you don't see? Even if you don't have evidence for something, but there's just this strong feeling about it, or there's a strong, like, circumstantial evidence. Can you believe the conclusion that you come to? Which I think is a very interesting conversation. And I have to say, it's different than faith. I think that this is not a faith conversation. This is more like an evidentiary conversation about just the way the world works and evidence, and thinking about, like, okay, could that be real? Could that be possible? And thinking through the evidence, the circumstances, all the pieces, and putting it together to say yes or no, or maybe, or partly, or some of it's true, some of it's not true. And I think that that is the journey Indiana Jones goes on. You also have in this book some plot twists, and we have got to talk about them. There is one plot twist that legit shocked me. I was reading, and I said out loud when I got to it, I said, "What? What on earth?" And my wife looked over at me and was like, "What's wrong?" And I just looked at her and I was like, well, I don't know how to explain it, but this book just took a turn that I did not expect. And here it was. And I explained it to her a little bit, and she was like, wow, that's interesting that they went there with that. And they go there with something that's very fascinating. And I was like, oh, we're doing this. Okay, here we go. And there's an interesting subplot in this book that I thought, wow, did not expect that at all. But I kind of am here for it. I think it's a great idea. So let's go and let's see what happens with this. So I feel like the plot twists are pretty good. You have some interesting foreshadowing of things that I loved as well. I thought that the foreshadowing in this book was expert level. Just like these little breadcrumbs that MacGregor left for you that then come back and you're like, oh, I saw that earlier, but I didn't think that would become anything, but there it is. So he does such a great job with that. I think that this one is such a fun, just adventure story with that fantasy element. And I think if you are a fantasy reader and you like fantasy stories and you like Indiana Jones, you will like this book. However, like I said, though, I really think you have to read some of the previous books in the series in order to really be able to understand what's going on. Because especially that one key element, if you have not read the previous books, you're going to be like, what? Like, what's that? Like, what happened with this? Why is this a thing? Like, why are they talking about this? And it would be really confusing. But otherwise, this is such a fun book. Great climax, a great ending epilogue. It was just so fun. I had such a great time. I could not stop reading this. This is definitely my favorite of the Indiana Jones prequel novels so far. So at the end of the day, I would have to give Indiana Jones and the Interior World a solid 4.5 out of 5 stars. Now you might be thinking, wait, what? I thought you would give this an easy 5 because you seem like you really love it. And I think the 4.5 is just for, there's a couple of slow spots just in the middle that are a little slow, and a couple spots where they're discussing some things that I thought, okay, we kind of discussed this a little bit, like let's move, and then you get moving. So it's like, to me, it's a nearly 5-star. Like this is the most 4.5, close to 5-star you could get, but it just falls at 4.5 for me, mainly because it was so fun. It was such a great book. I really enjoyed it, all the plot twists. But then, like I said, there's no character development. It's just not a thing. You don't really get a ton of answers to the philosophical questions, and there's those couple of slow spots. But otherwise, this was such a fun book. I really enjoyed it. If you like Indiana Jones, definitely check out the prequel novels. I think you will really enjoy them. Just know, like I said, the first 3 are good books. Like I would not say they're bad. They are just slower. And they don't have as much action as the later 3 do, 4, 5, and 6. So I'm interested to see, there are more books in the series. I believe there's 13 total. So I'm interested to see like what else happens in this series and where we go next. Unfortunately, Book 7 is the one book I don't have. I actually had a copy of Book 7. It's Indiana Jones and the Sky Pirates, but it had mold, and so I had to get rid of it because I was like, I can't let this affect any of my other books. I tried to kill the mold and get rid of it, and it just would not die. So I had to get rid of that book, and I was so sad about it. So I'm still on the hunt for that book, but once I get it, I will definitely be reading it because I really want to know if the Moais come back. I need to know. So anyways, that's my review of Indiana Jones and the Interior World. Have you read any of these Indiana Jones prequels? Please let me know in the comments down below if you have, and which ones are your favorite. I really, like I said, I enjoyed this book quite a bit. So until next time, everybody, keep reading. Bye.